Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr.Lamba's Awakening Call. Change the law of nature, but when you change a law, you have got to ensure that the change is for the better. Some changes are such which are necessary for the good of the people. Some changes are good for the people who are making the change, especially in politics. The political leaders are supposed to serve the people. But when they change the laws, which can have a long-term impact, then there's either something wrong with the change or something wrong with the people who are making the change. I always welcome change, but when change is for the sake of change, or change is to ensure in perpetuity some wrong, when the change is likely to impede the values, then it's nothing short of betrayal. Betrayal of your principles, betrayal of the people, betrayal of the heritage, betrayal of the values. And the people who make such changes, if they are not checked, then the history makes a meal of them, makes a mincemeat of them, because such are the people who destroy the values of a country. The latest change in the electoral system and amendments to the Canada Election Act apparently aims at making the Election Act better. But have you seen the consequential amendments of the bill, which can have a long-term effect and not necessarily for the good of the people, not necessarily for the betterment of the Canadians, but other ways? It aims to establish spending limits of the third parties and the political parties. The third party is crucial because in the last election in 2014, Tide Corporation and some other corporations had spent billions of dollars to ensure that the Liberals come in power, and they were funded by US. It was a foreign money, unethical and illegal. Well, now to ensure that such parties do not help the opposition parties, the act is being changed. So, nothing wrong with that. That's welcome. But look at the thing it does in this regard. Now, be very objective and you would see the travesty of the bill C-76, which must not be passed. And if it's passed, the first act of the new government should be to restore the old bill or make necessary amendments so that pernicious clauses are deleted. The bill seeks to establish a register of future electors, the people who are electing, in which citizens of the age of 14 to 17 age may be included. 14 to 17. Till today, the vote of right is given to the adults. Since when have the teens and the preteens become adults? And this bill seeks to establish a register of the future electors. The reason, the government is already legalizing pot. The government is already creating conditions where the teenagers feel that this government, this political party is something which takes care of their interest, maybe negatively, but at that age, children cannot think. So they are having a register of 14 to 17. Then it removes limitations on public education and information activities conducted by the Chief Electoral Officer. Till now, Election Canada and the Chief Electoral Officer conducts public education so that the people know their right and they vote according to their will without any obstruction. But now the limitations on that would be eradicated. Earlier, the limitation was one. The limitation was that they shall not propagate any political agenda, and the information activities shall be such which are impartial, which do not favor any political party, but now they are removed. Then that's not only removal. Remove this new bill. C-76 removes two limitations on voting by non-resident electors. Non-resident. Take care. And the requirement is that they must be residing outside Canada for less than 5 consecutive years. Normally, such people have no say. They should not be allowed to vote. The people who have been living out, even if they are citizens, should not be allowed to vote because they have no interest. But here, they say the requirement is that they intend to return in future. So any non-resident who just says, well, I intend to come back, ultimately they have to come back. So in the future they want to come back, so they are allowed to vote. Then another thing which has never happened before and should not be there, it authorizes the Minister of Citizenship to provide the Chief Electoral Officer with information about resident citizens and foreign nationals for the purpose of updating the register of electors. Foreign national is a crucial thing. Why should a citizenship minister provide information about the foreign national for updating the register of the voters? Since when are the foreign nationals supposed to vote? We say that the foreign bodies of the foreign nationals shall not even interfere, shall not provide help, shall not provide services in cash and kind. They cannot even support any political party. And here, the new act says that they can even vote. Can you ever believe that? Then it doesn't stop here. It removes the prohibition on the Chief Electoral Officer authorizing the notice of confirmation of register as identification. Earlier, whenever you want to vote, you are given a voter's information card. And that's a piece of identification. But now that is removed. And that is replaced. Replaced by what? The option of attestation for residence with the option of vouching for identity and residence. He just has to say, well, I reside here. He may not have any identity. He may not have a driver's license. He may not have a passport. But he vouches. He simply says, well, I live here, and he is allowed to vote. Now, to manipulate the elections, they have added one thing. They have removed the requirement of electoral signatures during advance poll. Now, what happens when you go for advance poll? You have to sign. So they are changing the procedure for closing the advance polls and allows for counting ballots for advance polls 1 hour before the regular polls stop. Normally, advance poll votes are counted at the same time when the regular voting has finished. They are counted simultaneously, because if you start counting the advance polls before, then it can impact the polling which is taking place. People might be, well, so and so is winning, so let's give our vote to him. Why should I waste vote on a losing candidate? So that will be allowed beforehand to negatively impact the election system. And this thing also goes further. It provides for certain requirements with regard to protection of personal information, which is good. Eligible parties, which is good. But then there's another thing. We say, and the base of the parliamentary democracy is no taxation without representation, and each citizen has to be represented. MPs and MLAs must be there. MPs and MPPs must be there. And then they should vote. But here, the Parliament of Canada Act has changed, and there'll be no by-election within 9 months of the due general election. So the next elections are taking place next November. So after January, there'll be no by-election. If somebody leaves, the seats remain vacant. No way does it happen. And it must not happen. But they are changing. This bill is an omnibus bill that would reverse all the changes brought in by the previous government, which were brought in by a lot of thought and a lot of rumination, a lot of public consultation. But now the whole thing is changed. They are limiting the spending by the parties and the advocacy groups during the 3 months period before an election is officially called. As a matter of fact, there should be no spending at all. You know, this bill, the Conservative Party is stalling since the last spring, because the government has not announced the spending limits. And then, you know, government has a right that the ministerial travels and the ads can be there. But the private parties cannot have the ads. They cannot say elect conservatives or elect NDP. But liberals can say that the minister so-and-so is saying that we should be elected. So why should what is sauce of the old proverb of what is sauce of the goose is sauce of the gander not be observed here? All should be equal before law. This bill represents the first step at grappling with social media being abused. It's being abused by the foreign and the domestic players. But does it happen? As a matter of fact, you know, this pre-read spending limit is indicative of liberals trying to rig the next year election in their own favor. The opposition parties are banned from spending, banned for advertising, but the ministerial travel will not be banned. So in the 3 months period, why can't we say that the ministers will not travel except in the government business? And when they are in government business, they will not even refer to the impending elections. And then, you know, the worst thing, Bill C-76 would allow a potential voter not to show any identity to cast the vote, and the asylum seekers are already receiving voter registration cards. Being able to vote with a simple Election Canada card could allow countless non-citizens, including asylum seekers, including illegal crossers, whose application for refugee status might have been rejected, to vote in the next election. These thousands and thousands of the refugees who are still not citizens, these thousands of the illegal immigrants, thousands of the asylum seekers would be allowed to vote, and they would think that since the Liberal Party is so kind enough to permit them to come illegally and stay and get benefits more than the citizens get, would naturally vote in favor of Liberal Party. So to cater to that, to ensure that the illegals can vote, to ensure that the non-residents can vote, this bill, Bill C-76, has been an object of discussion. But the public is not aware of that. It's for you to ensure that this bill is not passed. Otherwise, the fate of the country would not be decided by you. You will not be deciding the fate of the country. It shall be the illegal people. It shall be the asylum seekers. It shall be the refugees who have no stake in the country who will decide the people who are to rule Canada. Can you permit it? I definitely would not like somebody coming from another country illegally or still not a citizen to vote at all. This is a right of the citizens, and the government through this bill C-76 seeks to usurp this right and give this right to the people who are legally not supposed to vote. I think an urgent action is required on the part of all Canadians to rise up and say no, no to Bill C-76. Thank you.